Anti-establishment music is really important, and it is a privilege that we have in this country, the UK, to be able to do. It's a thing throughout history that hasn't really been readily available to criticize the aristocracy, and in some countries in the world, it still isn't. Now, why is it especially powerful through music? Well, for multiple reasons. I'd say the first thing is just before I get into any of that, I need to, I guess, define what anti establishment even is. Being anti establishment is being critical of the government, of the form that is currently in place in power, whether it's an aristocracy, whether it's actually the ruling people themselves, or just the entire structure. Now, anti-establishment music comes from many places, and there's many different genres and types. However, they all, believe it or not, have that one binding agent, which is the criticism, and in some cases, bordering violent, like scripture, when it comes to this system and how it should be dealt with, and the frustrations that one feels as a result of it. So I'm going to talk about first why it's important. It's important because being able to voice your opinions is something as humans that we've taken for granted, especially since 1990, since the whole Human Rights Act was signed by most of the countries in the world. It's now considered that the right to voice your opinion is a pretty crucial one. And being able to do that through music, through art, is again a powerful way of doing it because it opens up the channels for more people to hear it. What are people more likely to listen to? A politician's speech that goes on for 2.5 hours? Or a song that's probably under 5 minutes? Unless it's Rage Against the Machine, and then it's probably anywhere between 2 and 7 minutes. But that's the important thing. It's how many people are hearing it. And there are obviously people that are going to be hearing and not listening. And that's the case with a lot of music anyway. But the fact that people are hearing it on the first place and potentially going to replay it and eventually then listen is a great thing. And that's how you push your political aims if you're looking at it from a, I guess, an agenda's perspective. That's how you push it. But it's also important because it's a release for the artist. People like Rage, people like Gorillaz, people, even to be honest, the more softcore, I guess, like Wargasm. I'm not calling Wargasm softcore music, but in terms of the angsty anti-establishment acts, it kind of is a bit more softcore. That frustration that you get through punk, that from angst, even from stuff like grime, very anti-establishment for a lot of the kind of core concepts, and it's because the music comes from a place of frustration. If you just look at the names of those genres, all of them, besides punk, which is a lifestyle more than a music taste, I'd say the music taste kind of came from the lifestyle more, but the other two are often associated, the words grime with dirt, and the word angst with frustration. And these are the purest, rawest examples of, in my opinion, anti-establishment music. Now, I'll talk a little bit about tracks, because I feel like it's bad to just say stuff blanket and not give examples. Say, for example, I don't know, That's Not Me. Yeah, it's a bit of a kind of, what's the word? Joke song. It's a bit of like a kind of street anthem in a way. And a lot of people in the UK kind of see it as a bit of a kind of, if you listen to this, you're a roadman. But when you're actually listening to it, rather than hearing it, a lot of the stuff that Skepta is saying is actually really, really important stuff. I threw it in the bin because that's not me. It's talking about designer clothes. It's talking about things that he feels he's wearing because the system, because our society expects people to express opulence through clothing. And it's saying, nah, you know what? This is a thing that is set up by the establishment. This is a thing that's set up by society. But I'm not going to have that. I don't want that. Nah. That's not me. That's not something that I personally am going to prescribe to. And I think that's super important. I think the ability to do that and then express that through art would probably have helped a lot of people kind of get over that fact. Like, oh no, I have to dress a certain way, I have to be a certain way. And I suppose that goes slightly further than clothing if you want. We're getting to kind of more artsy territory the more we look into it, because obviously Skep is, to be honest, just talking about mainly clothes and acting a certain way. Also, the success of the song is hugely important because it did change alternative culture in the kind of grime kind of area massively. It was a really successful song and it spent a lot of time in the north end of the charts in the UK, and understandably so. A lot of other music, such as like, if we're going to go into punk, I'm talking like actual punk, not pop punk, none of the Green Day stuff. So in my opinion, I know it's going to sound a bit kind of elitist. I don't think that's punk. I feel like that's pop music with an undertone of punk. I'm going to say stuff like, I don't know, The Clash. That's punk, right? God Save the Queen, that kind of stuff. It's a direct criticism of the royal family. It's a direct criticism of the ruling classes of Britain. And yes, right now, the ruling class, the aristocracy in the old terms, is purely, I suppose, what would the word be? Like for show. I cannot think of the actual word for that. Symbolic. That's it. Right now, ceremonial even. But that criticism of them, nonetheless, as almost a fascist regime, as they say, is really interesting. Now, it's not something I particularly agree with. I don't think the royal family are fascists, but the ability to be able to express that because that is the way they felt. They felt that that was a good hook that they can lead on to with the anti-establishment. They don't believe in the royal family as a key concept. They're able to express that. And that frustration is then heard by millions across the world. That is one of the most famous punk tracks ever. It is iconic. I think that's brilliant. I think the ability to express that is brilliant. I think it's great. Now we're going to hop over the pond to the Atlantic, over the river, past Ireland, past Iceland, past Greenland, slightly below Canada, and we're going to look at Rage Against the Machine. So Rage are one of my favourite bands ever. And it's because, to be honest, a lot of their talk, especially when it came to the Iraq War, this kind of stuff, when it comes to America, and I guess the destruction of cultures in the States, how in a lot of tracks, they talk about how America's kind of informal empire, if you want to call it that, has really kind of crushed a lot of culture across the world, and certainly across South America, which is lead singer is half South American, so it's pretty awesome. That's like a personal thing that he's obviously really frustrated about. And it comes across in the music. Again, the criticism of the States in its own essence. See, there's even songs criticizing the American dream. So I've just looked at the criticism of the royal family, which is kind of one of the main symbols of the UK. The criticism of the American dream is something that is more common in media now. But I think Rage Against the Machine did it in a really articulative and a really genuinely good way. Rage criticize the American dream by saying all of these are American dreams. And they talk about the right to kill and basically how American capitalism has destroyed a lot of good people's lives and it's exploited people. And so you're exploring so many of these ideas that America have been involved in. The informal empire, you're looking at the Iraq War, and now you're also looking at the dangers of capitalism and how the American system has ultimately, well, just led to exploitation of so many people. Now, this isn't just an American thing, but because they're very America-centric, because obviously they're an American band and, you know, nothing quite hits close to home as home itself. I think the ability to question this again is really important. And to an extent, it leads people, just the average person, to have that little bit of thought in the back of their head, I think. That, yeah, this isn't okay. This ain't right. Even if you're just listening to punk music, even if you're not thinking it's having an effect on your day-to-day life, you're listening to grime, if you're listening to anything anti-social, kind of anti-establishment, it feeds you a little bit, just that extra thing that you might not normally be thinking about. That's like kind of skepticism, because it's important to stay on your toes. And I'm not going to get into any Alex Jones conspiracy theory stuff, because that's not what I'm here for. It's not my job, and I'm not interested, right? I'm not going to push agendas on you. But I think this is why it's important. Anti-establishment music is most important because it makes you think, it makes you question. And there's a lot of things that this establishment does fairly well. But there's also a hell of a lot of stuff it doesn't. And we need to be tapped on, we need to be switched on. So then, when the next elections or anything major comes up, you can be on the pulse and you can say, you know what, no, I'm not okay with this. And then what can you do about it? And that's where we go from there. And that's when you express, that's when you become almost the artist in some way. Not necessarily making music, but just being an active effect rather than a bystander. So that's why I think it's important, because it reminds us to check our mirrors, really. And it reminds us that, yeah, despite the fact that we are small, there are important things we can do to stand up to the powers that be, to the greater establishment. And maybe you don't want to do that. That's fine. But maybe you do. And those songs, those messages, I hope you along the way, I hope. So yeah, anyway, that was Alphabet Soup for listen to good music. Especially punk and angst and some things that are just slightly different. It's good to have a wide range. So yeah, if you do like pop music, a little bit of alternative, a little bit of something that actually makes you think, can be good. But yeah, anyway, thanks for watching. If you made it this far, then do all the YouTube stuff, and I really appreciate the support on the last few videos. So yeah, much love, Nostar. Cheers.